It'd be cool though. I think people that that's been the thing that I've been trying to say, and what I'm excited about is the people that aren't into racing at all that are going to go check this thing out, whether it's tomorrow for some of the practices or Saturday for practice and qualifying for IndyCar and the Trans Am race, all those things. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to be neat, and then all the concerts and stuff. If you're going to be down there, I do want to tell you 12:45 on Saturday, I'm going to be doing a special live edition of Chasing Checkers from the main stage. So for about 30 minutes, going to do the show there just for the people. So should be cool. So come check it out. Come say hi. Really looking forward to that. But going to be a cool weekend nonetheless. But Willie, I hope you get home.
I'm a crafty person. I will get home. It may not be the premier route, but we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done. Chase, we talked about this a little bit after you left yesterday, but you realize we got a real race in the NL East. I mean,
yes, we do.
It is fun. All three teams winning last night. Thank goodness the Mets finally figured out a way to beat the Marlins. It took everything they had to do it, but you got three teams within 2.5 games in the NL East. I feel like we need to just, let's have a little pennant fever here.
I know. I do. I mean, I saw my team play on Sunday, and they lost. They lost to Bob Cole's Milwaukee Brewers, so he was happy about that.
Who have full control of the Central, so they're looking really good.
Yeah, the Central is just not very good.
But you have your team did a makeover, the Braves, and sort of a patchwork thing, but it might be good enough.
Oh, they're 2.5 back.
If they get a couple of pitchers back, they're going to be right there, I think.
Yeah.
Some of it, we know baseball, so much of it depends on can the starting pitching down the stretch hold up and elevate you. The Mets starting rotation got them to this point. They haven't hit all year, but they've been sort of sputtering lately. They got a lot of question marks. The Braves lost, Soroka very early. Ian Anderson's been on the shelf for a while. I wonder, what do you hear on him? Is he coming back?
I haven't heard. They're that's
hopeful.
The thing. Like all the guys that you were thinking were going to be really able to help you in the starting rotation, haven't. I mean, it's been Charlie Morton pretty much carrying the water. Max Fried too, but it's that's been the hard part. So. Yeah, but what's interesting is you got three teams fighting for the NL East, but really none of those teams except for, I guess, maybe the Mets would be in a good position for the wild card because of what's going on in the West.
It's doubtful that any of those teams.
I mean, it's probably going to be the NL West. They're going to get three teams in.
What that would be, somebody would have to completely catch fire. Actually, two of them would have to catch fire because one of them is going to win the division. The other one would have to overtake somebody in the West. I'm not seeing it.
Well, Cincinnati is 4 games back of San Diego for the last wild card spot. Philadelphia 6 back. Atlanta 7, and and then St. Louis 7.5. But it's interesting. I mean that NL West, and I think what it is there is San Francisco. I don't. We've talked about San Francisco of being kind of the surprise. I think everybody looked at San Diego and L.A. as, okay, they're going to be players, but then here comes San Francisco, and San Francisco is looking like they might win the division with a 3.5 game lead right now over the Dodgers.
Speaking of the Dodgers, I watched last night. Very entertaining television. Astros at Dodgers. The backdrop, of course, it's easy to forget this because of all that's gone on with the pandemic. First of all, Mookie Betts led off the game, or his first 2 at-bats, hit homers. He's had, 6 games where he's had 3 home runs? So I was thinking, could this be another one of those games? When he goes on a roll, it's tough to stop him. He was slumping for a while, then he got injured. But his numbers are starting to come around. That's exciting for Mookie Betts. Always a big Mookie Betts fan in Nashville. But the real theater, of course, is the Astros with the trash cans and all that. So it's the first time they've gone to L.A. since the World Series, or since the story came out, I should say. Since the trash can scandal came to light and all of the penalties or lack thereof. So last 2 nights in L.A., they've had the biggest crowds of the season in MLB. The Astros won the first game. Last night, Jose Altuve, of course, front and center with the buzzer, the trash can. In fact, somebody snuck in an inflatable trash can and threw it onto the field in the first game. But Mr. Altuve, with Max Scherzer making his debut for the Dodgers, struck out 3 times to Scherzer. Now, you think the crowd was pumped up about that?
Oh, of course they were.
And then Joe Kelly, who has been one of the most outspoken guys about, he's got a big mouth, Joe Kelly.
What? No.
He's in there and to face Altuve. The crowd is going nuts. And sure enough, he strikes out Altuve. So Altuve gets the golden sombrero. And I don't think I've ever heard a crowd react that loud in a game that was at the time 7-1 or 7-2 or whatever. But it was great theater. Great theater.
Yeah. Well,
they don't like each other.
No.
And the Astros, give them credit, they're back in this thing. They're really, really good.
They really are. Yeah. I mean, they totally are. So they're leading the division. Oakland 4.5 back of them, which I thought the A's would be a little bit better. But
they're still right in there, though.
But I got to give some credit to Ryan. We've talked about this, Ryan Porth. We've talked about this on the money line. He's brought up a couple of times with the AL East. Watch Tampa. Now Tampa has a 1-game lead over Boston, over the Red Sox. So could Tampa take that division?
They're unbelievable. They traded Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Tommy John surgery. They're still 65-44 in one of the best divisions, deepest divisions in baseball.
They were buyers and sellers at the deadline. And I don't know if you see many teams that give away players and acquire them at the deadline and are still in contention to win their division.
Yeah, the AL East is the team in the American League that could probably get 3 teams in. Whoever wins the division between Boston and Tampa, the loser will be the first wild card, and then the Yankees are knocking on the door 2 games back of Oakland.
Yeah, that's the thing. We'll see if Oakland can maintain. They did add. Oakland did add at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
and that's
the
smart.
Yankees did too.
Oakland is a little bit like the Rays. They're just really smart in how they spend their money, the shrewd moves they make. They're always bringing in new guys that are good.
I'll tell you a sneaky team to watch though in the wild card race, the Jays.
Oh yeah,
3 games back.
Playing at home, that place is going to be energized. They added some pitchers. They'll be. It's going to be fun.
I didn't realize Seattle
Baseball's
was 3 games
fun.
back either.
Seattle's, they're building.
Yeah.
They're really built for next year in the year.
Yeah.
They acquired a closer, the Rays closer.
They took
and
the Rays
Diego
closer.
Castillo. And he got to save his first appearance against the Rays.
And at the same time, they traded their closer to a guy to the Astros in their own division. So that was there's been some shuffling around, some moves that those teams have figured out that they have to make, even though to their fans it's like, wait a minute, we just traded our closer. What are we doing?
It was a weird trade deadline, a really weird.
It was
deadline.
the wackiest trade deadline in the history of the game. I think there was all kinds of moves. It was exciting. So the table is set. So should we take a break before we get to Kurt here? We're waiting on Kurt Busch.
Yeah, we can do that real quick.
Let's do that. Kurt Busch is coming up. We'll have all kinds of stuff. Mitch Light is going to join us a little bit later in the show. We'll talk some college football with him as practice is getting started around the country.
We're going to talk to Ben Troop, former Titan.
That'll be fun. So let's take a quick break, come back with Kurt Busch right after this on Darren, Daunic, and Chase.
Welcome back in, Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Chase McCabe, Willie Daunic, Elijah Campbell behind the glass here on this Thursday. We say hello to the former Cup champion, Kurt Busch, who is on the line with us as NASCAR makes its return after a 2-week break. They'll be at Watkins Glen, turning right and left this week. Kurt, how you doing?
I'm doing good, boys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, always good to talk to you. And I know it feels like forever. It's been a couple weeks that since you guys raced at New Hampshire, had the Olympic break because NBC had all their coverage. But this feels like forever. So how much have you been itching to jump back in the car?
Yeah, it's pretty wild to have a 2-week break. I've been at this thing for 20 years, and to have 2 weeks in the middle of the season. It's crazy. And for me, I'm jumping in the simulator this afternoon, getting all the crew guys to set up a formal practice session to go through things at Watkins Glen, run some setup changes, and just get back in the groove and do the things that an old guy needs to do to find that repetition to be ready for Sunday's race.
Kurt, you're not old. You're definitely not old. I was at Atlanta, watched you beat your little brother and win your first race of the year, and I could tell that you had that Kurt Busch swagger back. And when you walked into the media center, I could see it. How much fun are you having right now?
It's been a blast. You know, the way that the latter part of my career has unfolded, and to have a great relationship with Monster Energy. You know, an awesome sponsor, a lot of fun. We're always doing different things together outside of the NASCAR world. And, you know, the focus with the team. And right now with Ganassi selling the team and all the crew guys are kind of up in the air. I'm like, wow, this is my chance to try to rally the troops, get everybody focused, and to expunge all the right energy out of everybody to make a run at this championship. So that's kind of the vibe in the field. And it was a great win for us at Atlanta a couple of weeks ago. And now we've got a 14-week stretch here to finish strong.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Chip Ganassi selling the NASCAR team to Trackhouse. It would be very easy for everybody to get that news and go, okay, well, let's start looking for jobs and looking for next year and all that stuff. But that hasn't been the case. The 42, the 1, both teams have been running well. You obviously got the win. So from the driver's seat, what does it mean to see those people that there is uncertainty, but they get after it every week, just like normal?
You know, this whole crazy world that we live in right now, outside of NASCAR, you know, with COVID and the process that all of us have had to go through and the different things we've had to adapt and to be fluid. You know, that's a word that none of us really used a couple of years ago. And it's just to be able to have that adaptability and to find the right rhythm through all this. And now with the team selling, it's like, okay, what else? You know, it's like, what asteroid is going to come in and hit us, and we'll have to deal with it too. And so it's just really drawing everybody closer together. And that's a key thing for us right now, to use the right way and to finish strong, because that's the human spirit.
Now, you know, as I mentioned, you beat Kyle at Atlanta, and you guys have had some 1-2 finishes over the years, which I know are fun to watch, fun for the fans. Did he ever cool off? You know, Kyle doesn't like finishing second, so did he ever cool off and congratulate you?
Yeah, I think there was a small congratulation. It might have been during the off week when he might have had a couple too many tequilas. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun racing with Kyle. And what's great in this part of my career and his career, we seem to have these 1-2 finishes at the same tracks with the tires and the feel that we have. And it just shows we drive the car the same way. And so I think we're going to have more of these types of finishes coming up because of just the patterns that I'm seeing with the way we drive, the tires, and certain tracks.
It's funny. Before the race at Nashville, I had the opportunity to talk to you, and I talked to Kyle, and I brought that up. Like, hey, you don't like finishing second. What is Brexton like? As Brexton enters his career, and he laughed and he said, believe it or not, he's actually worse, and I think he's going to be worse than me when he finishes second. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah. I've got to do a better job as an uncle to help Brexton. I took him to the go-kart track in Austin when Kyle was running the Xfinity race. And so I spent a couple hours with him, and this electric go-kart track, the battery wasn't charged right. And so he got waxed by the other kid that was out there. And he's pouting, and I'm just laughing at this whole thing. I know the cart was the problem. And then he gets in another run with another cart, and he just completely flips the table and just put on a clinic over the other kid. And he's just now walking around with Kyle Busch swagger. And I'm like, okay, Braxton, you need to be able to adapt that attitude when the car's not doing good. So he's going to be a fun project. He's a competitor. He's a Busch, and we'll always have our little edge about us.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up because you see that with race car drivers all the time. As you've been in the sport long enough and you get older and you go through different experiences, you learn how to handle the bad things, a little bit better. But, for you, I mean, you have this just chill about you that you've had, the last few years. How did that develop, and what are some things that maybe helped you get to that point where it's a little easier to deal with things when they're not going so great?
In all honesty, I would say it came from two major events in my life. One of them being with my wife, Ashley. She's a sweetheart, and she's an athlete. She plays polo, and she's a very competitive person, but she's very sweet and smart. And the other big moment was when I went to Walter Reed Medical Center to visit our military members who had just got shipped back there from wherever they were in the world, and they have these injuries. Some of them are life-threatening. They've lost legs or arms, or they got hit with shrapnel from an IED. And I see these men and women who have put their lives on the line for our freedom that we enjoy every day, and how their lives have changed. And I sat there and I thought, my days in the car, it's not so rough when you see something like this. And so the military has really affected me this last decade with being able to visit with them and help support them and to give back to that community.
Yeah, and you do a tremendous job with it. You've had the opportunity this year to be teammates with Ross Chastain, and it was announced this week he's going to be in that other Trackhouse car, the Watermelon Man. We've seen him come up through the ranks, but what are some things you noticed about him in the year running together?
He's a good kid. He's a blue-collar kid just like me, working hard with the family business and trying to make a name for himself in this racing world. And he's done everything right. He's ruffled the feathers of some of the veterans. He's grabbed a few wins here and there in the Xfinity and the Truck Series, and he'll be a winner in this Cup Series. And I'm happy for him that, Trackhouse wanted him to drive, and he's got I believe, a multi-year deal, and that will give him that comfort to know that he can be around for a long time.
So that, of course, leads us to the question with you. I know talking to you at Atlanta, you said you really look forward to driving the next-gen car, and that's kind of your motivation for wanting to continue because those retirement rumors had been out there. 2311 has been rumored as a connection to you. Where are you at on next year, and can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, things are close. I don't have anything signed just yet. But, again, like you said, the options are starting to get narrowed down, and I'm hopeful that with Monster Energy, myself, manufacturer, we're all able to put the puzzle pieces together the right way because I'm a racer, and I want to race the next gen car and finish my career knowing that I was able to tackle that next project with that car.
As we wrap this up, this weekend, you guys are at Watkins Glen, but the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix is right here in Nashville on the streets for the first time. You all made the return to the Nashville Super Speedway in June. SRX was here at the fairgrounds in July. Now IndyCar is here, which you ran the Indy 500 a few years ago. How cool is it to see Nashville as a racing city again?
Oh, it's awesome. I'm going to be glued to the TV to watch the Indy cars in your city streets. What a cool event with just the whole atmosphere of the town and everybody from all different forms of motorsport Like you said, NASCAR was there earlier at the Super Speedway with SRX at the short track, IndyCar City Streets. I mean, Nashville's doing it right now, and it's going to be a fun weekend for everybody to enjoy and to see something new and different. So it's a cool town, great vibe, and good people there for the motorsports world.
Well, Kurt, it's always good to talk to you. Best of luck at the Glen this weekend. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, my friend. Appreciate it. Good talking with you.
Absolutely. Kurt Busch, driver of the #1 Monster Energy Chevy for Chip Ganassi Racing. They'll be at Watkins Glen as they'll be on a road course, just like the Indy cars this weekend as they get their season going again. Kurt is such a fascinating study, Willie, because for those of you that have followed NASCAR, he came into the sport in the early 2000s, full of you-know-what and vinegar. Had some run-ins with Jimmy Spencer and some others, and kind of had to learn some things the hard way. And to watch his career progress, and he's grown, and now he's one of the leaders in the garage. I've heard a lot of people say that have been around the sport for a long time. They never thought they would say that, but he truly is. To see him grow and his brother Kyle, they've had a nice little brotherly rivalry. But very cool. Always enjoy the conversations with him. So
he's a good interview. He's a good interview, and obviously one of the best at what he does. So kudos to you. You've gotten us a lot of the big names in racing throughout the summer here.
Well, I think it's important as you just heard
we're a racing market.
Yeah, 3 nationally televised races in our market, all in June, July, and August. I think. Shows that it is a pretty big deal. So appreciate Kurt. And again, coming up Saturday at 9, it's Chasing Checkers. We always talk racing every Saturday, but we're doing a special 2-hour show this week for the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. So be sure to check that out Saturday at 9 here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Martin Truex Jr. going to join another NASCAR interview, but you hear from Takuma Sato, a 2-time Indy 500 champion, and several others as we get you set for the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix all weekend. So really looking forward to that and all the special things that we've been putting together for this thing. So gonna be neat.
No question about it. So Chase, where do you want to go? Why don't we take a break? Let's come back, and we'll shift gears. We'll talk about a couple other things that are going on. There was a number of things that happened. Of course, another big day. We'll get your take on some things that have gone on with the Titans. We've got some things to discuss with them, sort of revealing what the plan's going to be with Julio Jones. Nashville SC, a very important game they played last night. They didn't win, but they got another.
But that's okay. Against New England, that's okay.
New England has been a dominant team up in Foxborough where the Patriots play, and Nashville stood toe-to-toe with them last night. A 0-0 tie. A lot of good things. So we've got plenty to break down during the course of the show. We'll mix in some college football, as we mentioned before, and coming up at 11, we've got Ben Troop. So let's take a break, come back, and we'll get some things going here. Chase, get it started for us.
Yeah, and I will mention that Chasing Checkers is brought to you by Firestone, Spring Hill Heating and Cooling, Mercedes-Benz of Music City, European Collision Repair, and Hillside Medical when it airs on Saturday at 9. But I mentioned Firestone tires, the only tires driven by IndyCar drivers. They're finally hitting the road and racing on the streets of Nashville that they call home. You can watch all weekend as Firestone Rubber meets the legendary streets of Music City and enjoy the sweet music of IndyCars racing along every stretch, even crossing water on the Korean Veterans Bridge. Feels good to be home for Firestone, the exclusive tire of the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix and the official tire of the NTT IndyCar Series.
You know what? We're going to be probably cautious with Julio. So the Julio watch, will continue. We'll have a plan for him, but I would anticipate, that he would be, that we would be all on the same page, by the time the season started. You're going to see him out there at times. You're going to see him on the other field, and so he's played a lot of games, and that's kind of where we're going to be each and every day. So we can kind of all be on the same page, and I won't have to address it every day.
Mike Vrabel yesterday after practice on Julio Jones. He's missed a couple of practices now after leaving practice on Monday. Titans are off today. Willie Daunic, Chase McCabe, Darren, Daunic, and Chase. So, Chase, here is the question, because I think all of us realized that Julio Jones at this stage of his career was going to not practice a whole lot. But the concern is when you couple this with they are really going light on Derrick Henry as well for obvious reasons. That's totally fine. You've got to have those guys in the regular season.
Yep.
But are they going to be able, with the new offensive coordinator, to build the chemistry and get enough reps to be able to be where they need to be when the season starts? I think that's a challenge.
Yeah. If I was going to say that I had a concern, that would be my only concern. Now, I will say this. I give Mike Vrabel credit because he answered that question a lot more than I thought he would yesterday. He gave us more.
He was prepared for that question.
Yeah, he was, and he gave us more than he usually does. So I appreciate that because you kind of do understand somewhat what the plan is of, hey, he's going to be out there some. He's going to not be out there other days, and basically what he's saying is he's not going to practice a whole lot.
Now, he did not say anything specific about any injury. He did leave a practice, and a lot of the media has speculated, what it might be. Is it an ankle, something like that? So he's already dealing with something, but that's kind of a natural thing.
Sure.
He's been dealing with, the aches and pains and the little injuries that pop up the longer you play this game.
You got to preserve him, and that's what they're trying to do. As for the chemistry part, I do think that is a real thing. Derek, I'm not as worried about because he's been here. Todd Downing is going to take the Arthur Smith offense and modify it. But for the most part, it's going to be, what Derrick Henry is used to. And he already has the chemistry with Ryan Tannehill. I mean, if this was a brand new quarterback, I'd be even more concerned because, you got to get on the same page with handoffs. I mean, it's simple things like that. But Derrick Henry has that. Julio hasn't been here. So that's where you do worry. Are they going to be able to build that? Or is it going to take a couple of games? And it might. It might just take a couple of games to kind of get everybody on the same page. I would expect, because all reports that I have heard and I have read, and again, we've been doing the show, haven't been at practice, is the defense looks a lot better than the offense right now. And that's not that surprising because everybody was going to focus on the defense. You threw a lot at the defense. Bowen now has the coordinator title. Schwartz is there. So there's all these things that the defense should look better.
And most people say that more times than not, regardless of what level of football, the offense takes a little more time to get going.
You got to get in the rhythm. I mean, that's just simply what it is. And especially that you haven't had the full offensive unit with Julio.
Particularly the offensive line. That was a big theme of Vrabel yesterday. The offensive line has been limited.
Yeah. So, you're not – and also there's some gamesmanship here because it's still early in camp. You don't have 4 preseason games. The first preseason game is not until next week. So you have that you have to factor in. And so they're not going to show you everything. You're not going to see everybody. They have to have a slow build before they get ready to play Arizona. I mean, they're still more than a month away from playing the Cardinals in the season opener. So, I think you just got to relax a little bit on this stuff, and I think it's a good thing to not rush these guys into it because the last thing you want is Derrick Henry to pull a hammy or whatever, or Julio to twist an ankle second week of training camp.
I think they've come to grips with the fact that in this day and age of pro football, you're just not going to have as many reps as teams used to when they had two-a-days and you went about it that way. You had more off-season stuff. The off-season stuff has been limited. The COVID eliminated a ton of it last year. So remember how much we discussed that last year, how much offenses would be ahead of defenses. So I think they're confident that they've sort of been through this before. I'm just a little extra concerned, particularly with Jones, because he's never changed teams before. He's always been on the same team. This is a little different than your regular year for him. I'm definitely not as worried about Henry. We talked a lot yesterday, Chase, when you were gone, about his 2-year total of carries. When you add the playoffs last year, he's fourth since 1999 of running backs, number of carries in a 2-year span.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of workload. We talked about it a lot. He was over 370 last year. That's always a red flag. They're well aware of it, so they're going to manage it the way they feel like they need. But like you said, he's going to have the rhythm. He knows how to work with the offensive line. It's less important for him, but I think with Julio, it's different. Than, of course, Josh Reynolds wasn't practicing either. That's another guy you want to make sure is got his role carved out.
Here's the other thing I didn't even mention because I didn't even realize this, but with the one less preseason game, now the first preseason game, they didn't push it back necessarily. So it's next week. There's a 2-week gap in between the last preseason game against the Bears and the opener against the Cardinals. Usually it's just about a week. So that's another thing, that you'll have that 2-week gap in between the end of the preseason and the start of the regular season, that then you can maybe ease some guys in a little bit more to get them more into a game mode. So the way that
you got a long way to go before the season
and there's
starts.
17 games.
Yeah.
You know,
you got 17 games. That's true.
Right. So I just think I get it. We're all itching to I would love to walk out there and see this offense, at full song, and let's see Tannehill throwing dimes, and Julio gets a touchdown here, and AJ gets a touchdown here, and Reynolds comes across the middle. I mean, I would love to see all that. It's August 5th. So just gotta pump the brakes a little bit and try not to worry. I will give the coaching staff credit that they're easing these guys in. Now, with that said, there is such a thing as being too careful, because you don't want to not have these guys in shape and then they tweak something because they haven't been using these muscles. They haven't been, out taking the hit, things like that. So you do have to practice some.
Sure. And I just think that there's a natural chemistry that you need reps, even if it's not in pads. But you want to be healthy enough that you can go through some progressions, go through some reps on the field to build that rapport with your quarterback and with the other receivers. So the more you can do that, the more advantageous it's going to be. But I do think the reality is, in this day and age, there's just less reps. Peyton Manning used to go out of his way and go throw with the guys in the off season, go through that route running tree that they used to have, and over and over and over. He really valued that. It doesn't sound like you're going to be able to do as much of that, especially if what Mike Vrabel was saying yesterday was just get ready for it. Julio Jones is not going to practice a whole lot, but he's a veteran. Hopefully the mental reps and whatever he can do to get himself ready will be enough.
Well, and I think even just if you have a few minutes before or after practice where it's just Tannehill and Julio Jones and they're just running some routes, that's what you need right there to get them on the same page. Send the center and Tannehill and Jones and just work on some stuff.
And that's the one thing we don't know right now is there an injury that is going to keep him out a whole nother week, something like that, before you can even go out and do anything? Does he need to just rest for another handful of days before you can even get back on the field? We'll wait and see on that. But
I feel like if that was the case, somebody would have figured it out. I just feel like if it was something super serious.
No, I don't think. Well, that doesn't sound to me to be serious. If it's a week, but it's just time starts ticking to where you can get out there and do some basic things. Like right now, Taylor Lewan is doing basic things. He's not doing the team stuff yet, but he's he's stair-stepping up to where he needs to be.
Yeah,
Farley is another guy. He's doing the individual drills. He hasn't jumped in there full throttle yet, but they're trying to progress him to that stage. Two guys that are really important.
I don't know how much you guys talked about Taylor Lewan yesterday, but do people realize how big of a year this truly is for him? Because I think this is yes, he's coming off an injury, and he is an all-pro left tackle, but this is the time for him. He's got to come back in and show that he's the best guy on that offensive line by a lot and get back to that all-pro form, because the contract, as we've discussed, will be very easy to get out of next year. I mean, they can move on from Taylor Lewan, and if Dylan Radunz turns out to be something, which right now it's looking like he's not there yet, but if he turns out to be what they hoped for, and then they still have, somebody like Sombrello or Kendall Lamb that can fill a spot, they could move on from Taylor Lewan. And I feel like he knows that, and I think that listening to him and listening to him in a press conference has never been the issue. He has always said the right things, but it's time for Taylor Lewan to take even more steps, and I think he's put that on himself too. Not saying he hasn't lived up to, the contract or anything like that. I just, for where this team is and where the window is, Lewan has to be the anchor on that offensive line.
It goes back to something we talk about a lot on this show, and we've recently talked a lot about it with the Predators, with Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene. When you have that much invested in a guy, you got to get a return on that investment. Now, the problem that the Predators have is that money's guaranteed with those contracts for a long period of time. It's a little different in football. Lewan, $18.6 million cap hit, missed 15 games the last 2 years. He reminds me a little bit. He's like Johansson and Duchene. These are veteran guys. They understand. They're very aware of that fact, that when you have a big cap number, there's a lot of responsibility to live up to that. He's a talent. There's not much you can do if you get hurt. When you tear your ACL, what are you going to do? All you can do is work extremely hard to get back. I think you can count on him to give his best effort. I think the talent will be there. I do wonder about something we talked about yesterday in light of his contract. I don't know how much the cap is going to go up next year. I think they project it's going to go up quite a bit. But there's some things that they did to play for this year, to keep guys, to add Julio Jones.
Yeah.
They backloaded some contracts that really kick in next year. Tannehill's more than anybody else. His cap figure goes up to 38.6 next year. Autry, Bud Dupree, they get a much bigger cap hit next year. So that affects Lewan going forward.
It does big time, because with Lewan, the cap hit next year is 14.6. If they cut him, the dead cap is 1.7. So,
and you don't want to have to go there. You want to be able to say, hey, this guy had a great year, and we got to have him. He's our left tackle, because we know those guys don't grow on trees.
Yeah, and I don't really know how much restructuring he could do, because honestly, the way his contract was structured, it was pretty good for the team. Last year, like the first year, it was a $10 million, and then it went up to $13. Last year was $18, but then it comes back down, and so that's the way they structured the contract. But like I said, I'm not advocating to cut him. I'm just saying this has to be. He has to show how important he is, and you don't want to see any of the mental lapses that he's had, the suspensions that he had a couple years ago, getting kicked out of a game, things like that. He says the right things. He wants to come across as a leader. He said a few years ago that he wanted to be a better leader, and I think we saw some of that, but it's got to continue to grow. And I'm also, when people hate on him for doing the podcast and the bus, and I'm fine with that. I have never really felt like.
I think it has zero to do with.
I don't think it's ever interfered. I don't think it's ever interfered with his play. I think it's a great platform for players to, to kind of control their message, and he has a good time with it. He has big guests, so I don't have an issue with that. Never really have, but I think that Taylor Lewan would be the first to tell you that he's put a lot of pressure on himself too.
I agree, and I think it illustrates also how well they were able to shuffle and make it work without him last year. So they do have a little glimpse of what it's like without him, which I think adds a little focus to, okay, need impact here, because we figured out how to at least survive without you, and that would maybe make it a little more clear picture of what you would do if you did not want to bring him back. But like I said, hopefully he just plays the way he's capable, and you mark him down. Because everybody else is a year older. You've got an issue now at right tackle. You don't have Dennis Kelly. But on paper, you've got the stability of the interior. No, he's still out there.
Oh, man.
I believe he's still out there. Last I checked.
No. He did get signed. He's close to it. Looks like the Packers, potentially.
Potentially.
He has signed.
He's signed with the Packers?
Yeah. He's with the Pack.
All right.
Good for him.
Way to go, Dennis. I think we had that discussion a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Would they think about bringing it back? Probably not. There was a lot of discussion yesterday, too, about what to do at tackle. Right now, Kendall Lamb has been playing the left side while Lewan is out. And the question was asked, well, when are you going to move him over and stick him in there and let him compete for the job that's open?
Right.
And they said they would do that in time. They're going to have a competition going there. The rookie appears to be a little behind right now. That was something that
Radens.
He has been making some mistakes. Mike Vrabel, once again, it's always very interesting what he chooses to reveal and what he does not. He reserves the right every day to say absolutely nothing about a player. There are often times he's asked about a player.
Yeah,
he's working hard, getting better.
Gives you the generic answer. He hasn't done that as much this camp.
But he's done it. He's done it sometimes.
Yeah.
But for Radens, he basically said he's making mistakes, and he's repeating mistakes, so we need more consistency there. It was a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of here's a little of where we're coming from on where the competition is right now. So maybe it's just to slow down expectations, because honestly, and we talked about this yesterday, Elijah and I, realistically, when you're coming from North Dakota State and you have the track record, what he was scouted to be, toolsy guy, a little raw, I think it's maybe a little stretch to say he's going to be ready right in there to plug and play.
He's got to grow
day
into
one.
it.
Yeah, it's good. And if it takes a half a season, like it did for Nate Davis, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, because you have two veteran guys that you can plug in that spot.
Yes.
But to Vrabel's credit, excuse me, I do feel like he is talking about individual players a little bit more, both positively and negatively. He's giving praise where praise is deserved, and he's giving, thoughtful criticism, but criticism when it's also deserved. He's answering those questions maybe a little more, or maybe I've just noticed it more during this camp, or he has changed that. But there's certain guys. I mean, he didn't shy away from when Brady Breeze, when he threw him out of practice, of saying like, yeah, you got to be smarter. You can't make hits like that in practice. And you guys probably saw the situation in Carolina yesterday. Guy dirty hit in practice. Guy got carted off on the backboard, carted off from practice, and they kicked the guy off the team. So I mean, you just got to be smart when it comes to practice and the hits.
You have to know how to practice. That's something that Jeff Fisher talks about a lot, is when you're in a professional practice where you're not actually tackling somebody, you have to show that you're fast enough, and you show that you can make plays without actually following through and making the play. That's the tricky part of it. It's not live. It's almost live, though. And when you're trying to make a team, you've got to make sure that you show that you can get there. But it is a fine line.
Yeah, and you got to learn where that line is and how to walk it and all that stuff.
This guy didn't.
No.
He's looking for a job.
No, he did not. And hopefully the player that took the hit is okay. Because, getting carted off on a backboard like that. That's scary stuff.
I saw he did. They did diagnose him with a concussion, but he had no pain in his back or neck, so it did end up not being too serious for him.
Well, that's good. That's certainly good news. So we're going to talk to Ben Troop coming up at 11, former Titans tight end, Florida Gator as well. He's got some stuff that he wants to get into, so we'll chat with him. Always enjoyed catching up with him at SEC Media Days, and obviously you guys talked to him when he was a player here, so be good to talk to him.
That'll be good. And speaking of the SEC, there was some news that you pointed out that came down the pike just a few minutes ago on Greg Sankey. He is going to extend.
He has extended his contract to 2026 to remain the commissioner of the SEC, and I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody after the fine work that he's done, not just adding Texas and Oklahoma, which will be big, but just taking the SEC, from the level that Mike Slive got it to and where it was growing, and I think that Sankey has grown it even more, being the commissioner. The deal with Nashville for the men's and women's SEC basketball tournament, kind of making Nashville the hub for that, moving SEC Media Days around, making that into a 3-day event like it is, 4-day event, I should say. I think he's done a tremendous job. So not a surprise at all that he gets a contract extension through 2026.
Well, I have to say, when he took over for Mike Slive, my first impression was, not sure he's going to make it. Is this guy the guy that's going to be able to jump right in there? Those were not easy shoes to fill, but I have to say he's been very impressive. He has impressed me how he's grown into that job. Unquestioned leader right now. You think about guys in super, super powerful positions and the criticism that you just naturally take when you're in a position like that. I don't know that there's a whole lot of, Sankey, there's just not a lot of that throughout the league. And it would be easy for that to happen in a league like the SEC where it's so competitive and the stakes are really high. Would you agree with that? There's just not a lot of belly aching about the commissioner, like there is in other leagues.
No,
just think about the league. Pick a league.
Yeah,
Roger Goodell.
You never hear that
right down the line. Rob Manfred. Those guys in those positions, they are ripe for criticism.
Sankey is
the wind blows a lot the higher you go up the flagpole.
I would say that Greg Sankey is probably the best commissioner out there right now. Just with the health of his league, how he goes about making tough decisions, the things that he says. I sat there at SEC Media Days when he did his opening address, and I hung on to every word just because I think he's very thoughtful in how he puts things. He was weaving in the times they are a-changin' by Bob Dylan. He was weaving that in and out throughout his opening address. And, in the conversation that I had with him, talking about the different issues that college sports has been going through, not just the SEC, and then, how he's brought up Nashville. I mean, he gets it. He's one of those guys that gets it. And so you're right. You always hear Bob Bowlesby's name come up, or Manfred or Goodell or whatever. You don't hear that in a negative light with Greg Sankey.
Agreed. So on that, we'll take a break. When we come back, Ben Troop will join us, and we will talk some Titans football with him, maybe even mix in a little SEC. A little later in the show, we've got Mitch Light. We'll cover the college world with him. We've got a lot more coming. Stay tuned. This is Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game.
11 o'clock hour, Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game, on the Game Nashville app as well. Chase McCabe, Willie Daunic, Elijah Campbell here at the Wholesaling Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. We say hello to Ben Troop, second-round pick by the Tennessee Titans in 2004, and, of course, a Florida Gator as well. Always enjoy our conversations with him. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Always good to be on with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. It met you a few years ago at SEC Media Days, and obviously remember your time here with the Tennessee Titans. And now you've gone from football player to radio guy to author, as you have written a book, Uncommon and Unfinished: The Ben Troop Story. You wrote this with B.J. Bennett. How much fun was it to put your story down on paper?
I mean, it was the best, man. It was humbling because at the end of the day, you get to thinking to yourself, how can I tell my family thank you? How can I reach out to the people, places, and things that help me become who I become, and really let those people know, man, how much I appreciate them. I mean, you hear the Ben Troop story and you think it's going to be something different, but that's why it's better to just go and read it, man. It's not going to be your usual story. My life isn't normal, but my book definitely goes with that as well, man. It's very, very humbling to have been able to do it, and I'm looking forward to everybody who's going to read it.
If somebody, an up-and-coming athlete, reads this, what's something that you want them to take away from it?
That I'm a human being first. I know with so much goes on, it's hard to separate the professional athlete from the person. And I'm known for being, Florida Gator, Tennessee Titan, NFL Titan. I get that part. But the human side of what I do, the human side of just everyday life, of wanting to be the best dad, wanting to be the best brother, wanting to be the best uncle, wanting to be the best, contributor, to my community is what I want you to come from. And I am not trying to separate me from what you know me from, but I'm also trying to get you to see who I really am, when those things are no longer part of me.
When you were going through doing the research for all this, figuring out what you wanted to put in it, and so you go through the memory banks and it brings up things from your career and your life. How much fun was it to take that walk down memory lane and maybe think about some stuff you hadn't thought about in a while?
Oh, man. It took me back, and I'm, because obviously I'm looking at it now from my perspective, as a 38-year-old compared to being 21, 22, I can reflect on it better. I could really, really understand. I didn't understand what Aaron Kenny was really doing for me. I didn't understand what, Keith Bullitt was really doing for me. Ben Hartsock was really doing for me. Ron Zook. And there's so many names of people. It's so many people that helped me in my growth as a young man. And obviously right now, man, I appreciate those type of things now, but I wouldn't change it for nothing. Most of the time people are like, what would you change? I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change playing for the Tennessee Titans, playing for the University of Florida, being from Swainsboro, Georgia, because all those things made me me. But now I get a chance to say thank you. I'm the one used to being cheered for, from stadiums and signing autographs. And I want to cheer for those people that cheer for me. So this is how I do it, because at the end of the day, my words in this book is going to be forever. So I wanted to put something in it. I may never write another book, and I hope I get to. But if I don't write another book, if this is going to be my masterpiece, man, I feel great about it. I feel great. I wish I could name every single person, but the book would have been freaking, 1,200 pages. I want people to read it. But it's great, man. It's humbling to be able to do these things, because at the end of the day, my life would have been just fine being just fine. God saw something different, and here I am, all these years later, man, trying to be able to put my imprint on the people's lives, and hopefully I can, show them just how much they meant to me, even though it's years down the line.
Ben, you've already hit on a couple of names that bring back memories for us, going back and thinking about those Titans teams. But give me your overall, like when you set out and started to write down the chapters or section of this book that had to do with your time with the Titans, what comes to mind? What are the things people will look for?
Oh, my God, appreciation. Understand Aaron Kenny. I mean, the Tennessee Titans, Aaron Kenny, and more Aaron Kenny, because he took me under his wing. The first person I met when I got to Nashville, when I got off the plane and I got into the facility, it was Aaron Kenny. He had on a white polo with some shorts and a hat. He gave me his cell phone number, and he told me anything you needed. And I didn't realize that he was going to show me more about how being a man, not just how being a professional. I was a pro when I got drafted, but I wasn't a professional, right? So what happens is with EK, he showed me how to really, really be a professional on and off the field. I didn't have children or a wife or none of that then, but he showed me what it's going to take when I do have those things, because I saw the type of man he was. So I owe Aaron Kenny everything I've ever done in the National Football League. He knows this. I tell him, because I'm supposed to be his competition, but he goes, Ben, if you ain't taught the ropes, you ain't never going to learn it. You just going to be out here trying to figure out plays, and being a professional is knowing what to do and doing it, knowing where to be and being there, but knowing how to represent this organization away from these facilities. And like I said, but I owe EK everything. He's also the reason why I was in the Nashville Ballet. He's the reason why I had to wear a dress and bloomers and makeup and all that too. But no, man, Aaron Kenny and, man, Steve McNair, man, Vince Young, Ron Zook, Keith Book. I played with some of the best to ever do it, man. I ain't taking nothing away from these great quarterbacks. I caught touchdown passes from Steve McNair, and the guy he groomed as a young man. I caught. Now, I didn't catch the first touchdown pass from Vince Young. I caught his first touchdown pass as a starter. So make sure if you ever talk to B.Y., make sure he knows that I'm showing him love. But no, man, just hopefully they understand that, man, I wasn't the greatest player for the Tennessee Titans, but I will put my resume up. I was the greatest teammate there was, because guys enjoy playing with me as much as I enjoy playing with them, and hopefully they'll realize that, man, Nashville, Tennessee, the Tennessee Titans, they helped a young man from Swainsboro, Georgia, dream come true. And I owe, Floyd Reese and obviously Jeff Fisher the world for, taking a chance on me in 2004. But no, man, just the players, the coaches, the atmosphere, it was the best, man. I mean, T-Rack, I'm going to say this. When I first met T-Rack, and I can say I thought he was a rat. But then I had to do Titans Caravan with him, and I said, hey, man, you a rat? He said, do I look like a rat to you? I said, yeah. He said, oh, do I look like a raccoon? I said, like rack? Like R-A-C? He said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Georgia. Say nothing else. So, stuff like that, man. Just riding in a limo from Nashville, Tennessee to Memphis with Frank Wycheck doing Titans Caravan. It's so many great memories, man. I wish we would have been able to bring a Super Bowl there when I was there, but I got so many great memories, man. I mean, Derek Mason, Drew Bennett, you know what I'm saying? Jared Payton, the son of Walter. It's too many memories, man, but hopefully you guys will realize, as excited as I am to put the book out, I mean, when I was with the Titans, man, I was a kid in the candy store, man. I mean, I really, really got a chance to do it. My signature became an autograph, and, hey, man, I'm still trying to live the dream to this day.
So when you Ben Troop on the line with us, former Titans tight end, when you got the call in 2004, the draft call, who was on the other line? Was it Jeff or was it Floyd?
It was Jeff. It was, and when I tell you, it was no excitement from his voice. Like, hello, coach. Hey, Ben, how you doing? This Coach Jeff Fisher for the Tennessee Titans. I said, what's up, Coach? What's up, Ben? Listen, we're excited to have you. Looking forward to you coming down, man. Hold on, we'll put somebody else on. It wasn't, and mind you, I mean, I expected him to. It ain't like it is now, where everything is on TV. You got the social media presence. But I would say, and I was actually there the next day when Troy Fleming. I was there when they called Troy Fleming, and Troy sounded like Jeff. What's up, hey coach? What's up? It's like, hey man, I'm happy that my phone didn't drop. I'm happy that because I was in Swainsboro. That's back when phones used to roam. Ain't no roaming now.
Oh yeah.
I said, please don't let this phone roam, man. Please don't let this phone. I ain't want to be like hello, but no, man. My draft day experience was, listen, pick 32. Paul Tagliabue steps to the mic and says, with the 32nd pick in the 2004 NFL Draft, New England Patriots select Ben. I go, Watson, tight end out of the University of Georgia. I said, I hate you, Ben Watson, because we got the same first name. But no, man, I wouldn't change it, man. It was the best, man. I'm a country boy that never had to leave the South. From the state of Georgia, played college in the state of Florida. I played pro in Tennessee. The only thing messing me up about Tennessee is that freaking Central Time. It used to mess. I'm like, dude, it's 8 o'clock, right? No, it's not 8 o'clock in Georgia. Like, no, it was. Because I get on the plane, it'll say you leaving at 9, you get to Tennessee at 9. I'm like, what type of flight is this? Wait, what? It used to mess me up, man. But after about 3 years, them daylight savings, I think I came around.
We're talking to Ben Troop, the former Titan. He's got a book called Uncommon and Unfinished. And you're going to learn more about it. It's going to start shipping in mid-September. But go to bentroop84.com, and you can get the information about the book there. So, Ben, let me hit on another thing. This is always interesting to me, the recruiting process for you. You said a couple of times, you're from Georgia. You go play college football at Florida. Big rivals, back and forth. What's that like when you go to the rival state to play college ball?
You know what? Before I signed my national letter of intent, all my teachers was cool with me because they thought I was all going to Georgia. And when I went to Florida, man, they started telling me to be quiet, who you looking at, giving me extra credit. Like, what's wrong with y'all? Because I didn't realize how big it was. I graduated high school at 17, so I was very, very young and naive in my mind. But listen, man, it came down to Jim Donnan and Steve Spurrier. Come on, man, I respect Jim Donnan. Steve Spurrier is the man to this day. So when my cousin Purcell Dasher told me in the recruiting process, he said, when Steve Spurrier come to your house, you do not tell him no. I'm like, why would Steve Spurrier come to my house? Because I didn't come from a high school that put out big-time recruits every year. He came to my house. They gave the spiel with the assistant coaches. He was nodding off, about to go to sleep. They elbowed him. He looked at me and said, Benny, you going to be with us? And I said, yeah. Still went to all the recruiting. I mean, from South Carolina to Georgia to Clemson. But, man, I want to know what it was like, man. And plus, like most kids, I ain't never really been away from home. I don't really know what it's like to be able to survive away from home. So going to Gainesville was an incredible experience. Never lost to Georgia. In 2000, I was in the Florida-Georgia High School All-Star Game, and I caught the game-winning two-point conversion to beat Georgia. The quarterback was David Green. 2 years later, I catch the game-winning touchdown pass to beat Georgia. Who was the starting quarterback for Georgia? David Green. So this stuff is crazy, man. I mean, Ronnie Brown, the great Ronnie Brown, who was the number 2 overall pick in the 2005 NFL Draft in the Florida-Georgia High School All-Star Game, he had to play fullback. That's how good the team was. So, hey, man, my life is a dream, man. Like I said, I tell people all the time, I played with Keith Bulluck, man. Keith Bulluck picked off Drew Brees 3 times. And after the third pick, he kneeled down, got up, and he threw the ball back to Drew. I said, did you throw the ball back to Drew? Like, yeah, man, I missed the Monday night. Too many memories, man. Too many great memories. So I'm just blessed enough to be able to say, man, I got a chance to, play 4 years in Nashville, and I'm in the media now. So in 2019, when the draft was in Nashville, I was there working the draft.
It's funny. I'm just trying to picture some of your teachers. You could probably go back to your high school now, and some of them would probably still give you a hard time, right, for leaving Georgia? They're probably still big Georgia fans.
And they do. And plus, and I talked to them trash about Georgia. I said, listen, man, certain things in life I ain't never seen. You know what I'm saying? I said, I've never seen a guy that was that 4'2" dunk. And I've never seen Georgia win a national championship. And hopefully that'll be for the rest of my life. I live in Georgia now. If Georgia wins the national championship, y'all gonna have to make room for me up there in Nashville because I can't live here no more.
Well, you were talking, Ben, about you're bringing back some great memories. The Spurrier era. We just got so used to just loads and loads of talent every year. And right now they're very good. But a lot of people are saying, okay, where is that just extra wave that puts you over the top and puts you in the national discussion? Where do you think they are on that track? They're obviously very well coached with Dan Mullen.
Recruiting. I mean, I know people don't want to talk about it, but the top teams in the country have the top recruiting team. They number top 5 in recruiting. Dan Mullen. Now, look, you talk about recruiting. He's never ever had a problem with recruiting. I mean, developing talent at the quarterback position. You look at what he did with Dak. Dak Prescott, look what he did with Nick Fitzgerald. Look what he did with Tim Tebow. Look what he did with Kyle Trask. But just because you win the East and you can't beat Alabama, people going to look at what you didn't do. It can't be an almost thing. You at the University of Florida, you at the flagship university and the biggest brand in the state of Florida, you got to get over the hump. Can't live off who you used to be. I know he just signed a contract extension. But if he can't get in the top 10, even top 5 of recruiting, it's going to be an uphill battle because as the great Steve Spurrier would say, listen, hey, Coach, man, what makes winning so easy? Great players. Great players make great schemes look even greater because I got the players that can do it. I mean, Alabama is every year Alabama has a new offensive coordinator. But you know why they can have a new one? Because the players are the same. I can stick anybody in there. Mike Locksley, Sarkisian. You look at Lane Kiffin, and same result. So if he can get those players in there, it's gonna make life a lot easier on them.
All right, Ben. Since we're going down memory lane. Steve Spurrier, of course, one of the great characters of all time. Give me your favorite Steve Spurrier story playing for him.
my great. Okay, so when 2 of them real quick. So when I was getting recruited, I got to go to Steve Spurrier's house. Like I got to go to his house.
Okay.
And he has his trophy room is the truth. So he said, so I'm looking through his house. He's like, man, go to the trophy room. So I go in there, and it's trophies from top to bottom, coaches of the year, all this, and right there in the center, there it is. To go to Heisman. So I look at him, he looked at me like I know you want to touch it. So I'm inching closer to it, and I get ready to touch it. And he goes, all right, that's enough. All right, you guys get. And I'm like, come on, bro. Like he ain't let me touch it. I wasn't able to say I was gonna touch it, but he let me get right. And then Coach Spurrier, he buys his suits off the rack. He ain't into like
doesn't get it tailored,
suit.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's kind of loose. Just grab it.
So he had this suit. We getting ready to play Georgia, and he gets on the bus, and he's just standing there, right? Looking at me, and I'm looking at him. We ain't saying that, just awkward silence. And he says, "Benny, how do I look?" And I'm looking around like, "Man, you look good." What am I supposed to say? You look awful, coach. What kind of? You look good. What am I supposed to say? You look bad. But the thing is, you know, he had on his sunglasses. I think it was like a green suit or something. It was like a funny looking suit, man. It ain't had nothing to do with the theme of the game. It wasn't orange, wasn't blue, wasn't red, wasn't black. But I told him he looked good. But the thing about Coach Spurrier is he do this thing called a 2-minute tan. He goes down the field, he takes off his shirt for 2 minutes, and he goes, "All right, I'm good." I'm like, "I got my tan for today." And I'm like, so Coach Spurrier, he's weird, right? But who's going to tell him he's weird? Not me. I'm not going to tell him.
So that's the theme of this, right? Is you can't always say what you think when you're checking him out.
Course,
but I'm sure you and your teammates could have some fun behind closed doors at his expense. The 2-minute tan, I love that. I need to try that.
I'm in the media, man. A couple of years ago, man, we was at SEC Media Days in Huntsville, and he went on Radio Row to tell everybody on Radio Row, "I'm not doing radio."
Yep.
He comes on Radio Row and says, "I'm not doing it." I come out the bathroom. Steve McClain, the sports and information director, is there. He looks at me and goes, "Benny, you want to do a radio? You want to do an interview with Coach?" I said, "He's not doing one." He said, "He'll do one for you." He walked down, sat down for me for about 6 minutes and did radio. That's the kind of dude he is, man. Like he didn't have to do that for me. I didn't catch but one touchdown pass when he was there. Didn't play quarterback. Didn't boost his resume. And to this day, he said the reason why he calls me Benny and not Ben is because that's what my family calls me. He said we are family, whether you choose it or not. And hey, man, he's the man. Got a new restaurant down there in Gainesville, man. This man, he's Benjamin Button, man. He's aging, in reverse, man. He seems to get better with time, man. I don't know how he's doing it, man.
Absolutely. He's a gem, that's for sure. Ben Troop is here with us. The new book is Uncommon and Unfinished, the Ben Troop story, with B.J. Bennett as well. It's all about Ben's life and the trials and tribulations that have both changed Ben and helped Ben change the world. So be sure to check it out. You can go to the website, bentroop84.com, and I know it'll be out in September, but Ben, looking forward to our shipping starts in mid-September, but looking forward to reading it, and congratulations on all the success.
Hey, man, listen, man, I appreciate you guys having me on, and when the book gets close to, coming out, man, after you guys have read it, I'm going to have to come back on, because like I said, if Georgia wins the national championship, y'all going to have to talk to y'all program director, because y'all might have to add another talent, because I can't listen no more.
Hey, we will do it, and we will talk to you again then, but best of luck, Ben. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Ben Troop.
Good stuff.
Oh, awesome stuff. It has the energy.
He's a live wire.
Oh, yes. He's fun. You just got to let him go. But former Titans tight end, former Florida Gator as well. Uncommon and Unfinished, the Ben Troop story. Really good to catch up with Ben Troop. We will have much more coming here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Great stuff with Ben Troop, former Tennessee Titan tight end. I always assume that everybody in our town has been around long enough to remember Ben Troop playing, but with each passing year, he gets further and further removed. He was early 2000s, and unfortunately for Ben, he sort of came in when the team was having to retool, the later years of Steve McNair, the transition to Vince Young. He was there for the rebuild to a large degree. It was a very, very young team when he first got there.
He was there with, obviously, you mentioned Aaron Kinney. Aaron Kinney was one of the bridge guys, a very young player on the great Titans teams of the early 2000s. Yeah. And then they replaced.
There just weren't a lot of veterans on the team. But Aaron Kinney was a pro, outstanding guy.
And then, because Wycheck had retired.
Right.
And so it was Bo Scaife, Aaron Kinney, or not Bo Scaife, Aaron Kinney, Ben Troop, and then they got Bo Scaife.
Eventually
later.
Bo Scaife, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool to talk. A lot of energy there.
A lot of energy. I love the story about Steve Spurrier. You have like this icon guy that you're playing for. And can you imagine?
Hey, Benny.
Can you imagine though being kind of a funny, wise guy observing things like Ben does? I kind of was like this at times. There's always some funny things that you kind of want to say to your coach just to see if he'd laugh.
Yeah.
But you don't quite have the guts to say it because you have a little bit of fear. There's obviously a lot of respect. But you could tell he was like, he's looking at Steve Spurrier's suit going, Coach, you just got that off the rack. What are you doing with this green suit?
He wanted to roast him so bad.
He wanted so bad. And in the back of the bus, he's like, did you see what Coach is wearing? That's that happens. It's so funny. But, years later, you can tell that bond is there between player and coach.
And he's right because that SEC Media Days was 2 years ago. We were all down there, and we saw Spurrier hit Radio Row. So I made a beeline to the gaggle of people around him, and I asked the SID, I was like, hey, Coach got a few minutes, Nashville, come on with us. And he was like, no, he's not really doing anything. And then sure enough, he did. He went on with Ben. And I think that was it. He may have done, I think he did Jacksonville. I think he went on with 1010 XL in Jacksonville and then went on with Ben Troop. But that was it.
Speaking of Jacksonville, we're going to go there at noon. We're going to check in with another Florida connection, Urban Meyer, as he tries to put his stamp on the Jaguars.
No, we're not checking in with Urban Meyer. We're
not checking in with Urban Meyer, but we're going to checking in on how he's running practices.
Mike Duraco.
Can a college coach use some college tactics to get more out of a struggling NFL franchise? We'll see. We'll check in on that at noon. Certainly, Clint Sterner painted a picture that is pretty bleak down in Houston. It's a very interesting situation in the AFC South where you have Houston's complete mess right now, and you have Jacksonville starting from scratch once again with a brand new quarterback, brand new coach, etc. Now, let's talk about Ryan Tannehill. This is something that happened earlier in the week. We had Mike Sando on to give his take on the quarterback tier piece he does every year for The Athletic. He gets 50 experts and puts every quarterback in a tier. Ryan Tannehill, I think, is one of the more interesting quarterbacks, regardless of whether you're talking about The Athletic and Mike Sando, Football Outsiders, which I'll share a little bit of what they think of him in a moment. Everybody puts together rankings of quarterbacks. There's so much this year about, is Ryan Tannehill a, quote, top 10 quarterback? Is he a tier 1 quarterback?
Yep.
How much of it is Tannehill? How much of it is Derrick Henry? We know Derrick Henry is a big part of the equation here. But in the Mike Sando piece, he has at least moved up from tier 3 to tier 2, although it wasn't as clear-cut, I think, as a lot of us would have thought. I would have thought it would be between tier 2 and tier 1.
Yeah.
But really, the vote was very close between tier 2 and still being in tier 3. So there's a lot of the evaluators that still see him as a guy that's benefiting a lot by having one of the most unique weapons in the game behind him. But when we're talking about the eyeball test and evaluation, one of the things that came up was that last impression of a game where Derrick Henry wasn't dominating, and there was an opportunity for him to elevate his team. He didn't quite do it in the Ravens playoff game. And so Mike Sando talked about how that may have influenced a few of the voters.
Yeah, I do. I think certainly if he had led them to win that game, I think there's no question he has more Tier 2 votes. I don't know entirely how fair that is. I mean, Buffalo's offense scored 10 points against Baltimore. The really great defenses, there's not a lot of people just lighting them up unless Mahomes will do it sometimes, but he's clearly at the top of Tier 1, and no one's saying Tannehill's Mahomes, right? So, yeah, I do think that comes into play, and that's true with a lot of these guys, Lamar Jackson never got into Tier 1, even though he gets some Tier 1 votes, even as an MVP of the league. Because of some of that, you get into the playoffs and people game plan you better and suddenly make you play left-handed, and your running game could get solved all of a sudden, and now it's on you as a quarterback, and that's a hard situation to be in. And I think it's hard also to be in that situation when that's not how you play week to week. Whether you're Lamar Jackson or whether you're Ryan Tannehill, you are in a run-heavy offense, and so you're not practicing the drop-back passing game all the time, and so it can be, you're not playing to your strengths as a team when you're that type of team, and suddenly you're trying to be the Dan Fouts Chargers, right? It just doesn't come that easy.
So to review, if you didn't hear our interview with Mike Sando, Ryan Tannehill did not get a single vote of the 50 votes for Tier 1. He got 27 votes for Tier 2, which placed him 13th overall in the quarterback rankings. He got 23 votes for Tier 3, so it was 27-23, Tier 2 as opposed to Tier 3. So you heard some of the things that were influencing. That game against the Ravens certainly was fresh in a lot of people's minds. And there's a couple other things I'll work in there in a moment from Football Outsiders that when you start to really try to lay out what he is. But I know this. That offense has cooked since he took over.
Oh, yeah. And like, here's the thing that people forget.
Like, how much better could he be?
Right. Because think about this. Derrick Henry wasn't great with Mariota. Derrick Henry got better when Tannehill took over.
There's no doubt.
As the quarterback. So I think that gets lost sometimes when and I would love to know. There's still doubters. There's still people that doubt Ryan Tannehill. And if you're one of them, I would love to know your rationale. Like, seriously, I'd love to know why you still think that if you're a doubter of Ryan Tannehill. 615-737-1025, or you can call or text on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Because I understand the playoff game. He was in a position to win it, put the team on his back, and he didn't do it. I get it. I understand. The AFC Championship game, Henry was taken out of it. Tannehill had a chance. So I know that I think factors in a lot for people, but you have to look at the overall efficiency of the offense with Tannehill as the quarterback and what it did for Derrick Henry, what it's done for A.J. Brown, what it could potentially do with Julio Jones now as a part of things. I think that you just have to look at that picture overall with what he is and what he's meant to this team. So, you get into rankings and tiers and all of that, but the eye test for me shows me that, and I've always said, he needs pieces. He needs the pieces around him. He needs the right pieces. He's got that. But I think he's perfectly capable of winning this team a Super Bowl with everything clicking like it needs to.
That's the most important thing. But that is why he is put in a lot of people's minds still as a tier 3, because they think he has got the great surrounding cast. And that is sort of the premise when Mike Sando goes to these 50 guys is, how much is a tier 1 guy is a guy that is going to elevate an average group around him. So here's a little bit more of what Sando was hearing from the 50 experts. These are GMs, these are coaches, these are talent evaluators that end up putting him in tier 3.
The hardest thing to do as a quarterback is to be in a high-volume drop-back pass offense. By drop-back, I mean we're not doing play action. We're just dropping back and throwing the ball. That's third down in the NFL, right? It's hard. And so then on top of that, to make it even harder would be if you were in a drop-back pass offense, it's on the quarterback's shoulders, and the defense that you're going against really isn't concerned about a special running back. They're just going to be focused on you as a quarterback. If you're that quarterback and you have a bad defense, I mean, you're going to hardly win any games. Now, the case for Tannehill being better than the Tier 3 is that excellent production, excellent efficiency. They went 11-5 last year despite having a bad defense. Not a lot of quarterbacks, not a lot of teams can do that. It's really unusual to do that. So, no, without question, the Titans' success last year was driven by a really productive, highly ranked offense. And by the way, the quarterback of that offense was Ryan Tannehill. Now, yeah, I think we know from watching the games that he's not Mahomes and Rodgers, right? I mean, it's not like we're watching the Titans going, unbelievable. Did you see what Tannehill did? There's only 3 guys in the league who can do that, right? We're not necessarily saying that. And we know that people are watching that running back. I mean, that is a special player. And we also know that just from the structure of the offense, they're trying to pass the ball less and run the ball more. They run the ball more on those early downs than just about anybody in the league. So when you meld all those things together, I think kind of what happens, why he would stay in the Tier 3, is he had a lot of years of being a Tier 3 player, right? So when you change the circumstances around the player, maybe people are slower to come off of it. So I think this will be a really great year to evaluate even more because they lost the coach, right? I mean, they lost Arthur Smith, and so if you wanted to give Arthur Smith some of the credit, I just see the more he does this, the more the credit's going to siphon towards him, and maybe he pushes up higher in Tier 2, right? And he's up there with Dak Prescott and Lamar Jackson's up there. Maybe he gets into that group.
That's Mike Sando from The Athletic. I get the argument, but I think it's insulting to have him still in Tier 3 after the numbers he's put up. You want to make the argument he's Tier 2 and not Tier 1?
Well, and I definitely think
I understand that. And he is in Tier 2 in Sando's piece, but there was a lot of people that still have him in Tier 3. I think that's harsh.
Here's the thing. So with Tier 1 is Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, and Deshaun Watson. I don't have much of an argument with that. Those guys are elite. Those are the best of the best. Watson, maybe you can kind of put on the fringe just because of time, but the others I would say are elite, best of the best. Josh Allen, yeah, I'd probably put Josh Allen ahead of Tannehill right now, but I don't know if I could say that about Lamar Jackson. Matthew Stafford, they have Stafford rated ahead of him. Dak Prescott. Justin Herbert is going into his second year. You're basing that on 1 year. Matt Ryan, no, I wouldn't put ahead of him. Kyler Murray, no, I wouldn't put ahead of him.
Particularly at this stage of his career, surprises me.
My only, I don't have an issue with him being in Tier 2. My thing would be, I think he's top 10.
Yeah, higher up in Tier 2, closer to Tier 1 than what they put him. But maybe this is another thing that will fuel him. I think that there's plenty of fun. If he's the type of guy, or maybe the Titans are the type of team that likes to feed off of that kind of thing, which is a great source of motivation for thousands of players over decades. Tell me I'm not that good. Oh, all right, I'll show you. That's great motivation. If it works, then do it. It's us against the world. Nobody thought we could do it. Tannehill's got plenty of material for this. And let's break it down a couple things. You heard Sando say the real test sometimes of a Tier 1 is if you're in a obvious passing situation. Then his numbers probably aren't as good with that. Where Tannehill has really made bank, and he had the best season any Titans quarterback or Oilers quarterback, for that matter, has ever had. I'd put it up against Warren Moon's best season, Steve McNair's best season. I think he wins last year, regular season. 33 touchdown passes. And when you add timely running on top of that, it's the best season any of you guys had. Now, Henry has a lot of it. But what they say, here's the knock on Tannehill. A, he gets a lot of what he gets on play action, which again leads you to say, is it Tannehill or is it number 22 back there?
Right.
You got to give him credit. He makes the plays. But the play action is a critical asset to why the offense has been so good. Agreed? And people think that maybe that's tough to sustain over the years, although people were surprised with how well they did it again last year. Now you got the new coach. Derrick Henry's a year older, different pieces out there. Will it be exactly the same? It's a question mark. The other thing that Football Outsiders points out, the only real weakness is that he's poor under pressure. His value over average is much lower when he's pressured as opposed to no pressure. Now, to me, when I read that, I'm like, well, who isn't?
Right.
Who's better under pressure? I don't know. Like, I would in my recess games when it was 5 Mississippi, that was one thing. And if it was 1 blitz,
it's
a little easier to pass when it's 5 Mississippi. So, I
think there are certainly some guys that are Joe Cool when it comes to being under pressure. I mean, Brady, Peyton Manning was that way.
Scrambling quarterbacks, wherever the pocket collapses, you can be like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen Russell Wilson do some things that just
okay. So and that's where Football Outsiders come from. That relative to everybody else, he grades out low under pressure. Although I look at I didn't see that bad. But the eye test doesn't support that to me. I thought he did pretty well, but
I've seen him make some throws under pressure.
Yeah,
they're pretty darn good. So, the thing, okay, I hate playing this game, but it's the NFL. They're playing 17 games. You just have to factor this in. The biggest weapons on this team we identify is Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, offensively. Those are the big 3, right? We all agree on.
We hope.
Okay. You have to figure that over the course of a 17-game season, one of them's going to get hurt. One of them's going to miss a game or 2 or more.
Yeah.
Okay? That's probably going to happen. The probability of that happening is better than it not. You saw it last year. A.J. Brown missed some games. Corey Davis missed some games. Henry has been the most consistent one in his career. He missed the game a couple years ago against the Saints because it was one that it didn't really matter what happened, so they kept him out. That was when the hamstring was really bothering him. So they gave him a game off and rested him for that. But you just have to factor that in, that you're going to be without one of your go-to guys. That's where the test is going to come in. How does Tannehill overcome that? Is he able to, is Josh Reynolds able to then insert into being, one of the go-tos and they're able to do it without missing a beat? That starts with Tannehill. So that's where some of the doubters come into play of, well, if he's out there with Willie, Chase, and Elijah, can he still do it? That's
where a tier 1 quarterback, you would say, he would elevate Willie, Chase, and Elijah.
Right.
And Tannehill may not be in that category. The other thing that Sando pointed out, which is true, which is also used against Tannehill, is the Titans pass less than virtually any team in the league. He did what he did, 33 touchdown passes, 7 rushing touchdowns.
Right.
And they threw the ball he made only 481 passes. He didn't even pass for 4,000 yards, which is usually an easy one, that people hit. Back when I was growing up, early 80s, only guys like Dan Fouts and some of the rare, like Dan Marino, like he hit 5,000. Oh my gosh, that's never been done. Now it's like 4,000 is sort of routine for teams that pass a normal amount. The Titans don't pass normal. They run an odd amount of the time. It's a throwback. That's used against Tannehill, although the efficiency numbers are lights out. But that goes back to Henry, the production, and then the play action off of that.
Mark from Paris, the play action gets lost in all of this.
Well, that's why.
Yeah.
Will that continue to be as great as it has been the last 2 years with a different offensive coordinator?
Yeah. Mark from Paris says, you guys are drinking the Kool-Aid. Tannehill has to get it done when teams take Henry away. Tannehill is better than a lot of NFL quarterbacks, but I'd say 13th is fair. And that seems to be the general consensus and what everybody goes back to when they're saying that, no, he's not, he's not this, I'm not going to say elite, but, he shouldn't be higher than what he is. They always go, well, what happens when Henry gets taken away? And I understand that argument. I do. But overall, like this team doesn't have the success that it did going to the AFC Championship game, winning the division last year with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. They don't. You've seen enough to tell you that Tannehill has gotten them to that point, and helped bring all this together. You need glue, and I think that Tannehill has been the glue to help bring it all together.
That's the other part that is probably the intangible, is how solid a leader he's been. I think he probably is underrated in that category. Would you agree? I think the respect and leadership quality that he's earned from his teammates has really been noticeable if you're watching close. I don't know if people outside of Nashville really see that.
Yeah, they don't. And
he's not a guy that is Mr. Interview. He doesn't take over the town, being everywhere, being seen. He's not a national figure, but he's a really solid leader, I think.
Yeah, because, most of the national media, they focus on 22 and now Julio Jones, and that's it. I don't even think A.J. Brown gets the praise that he deserves in his first 2 years in the league.
On that, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll have more with you. Don't forget, at noon, we'll check in with the Jacksonville Jaguars and their camp. We'll find out more about what Urban Meyer has been doing. Interesting article written that will tell you more about. Will the college thing work in the NFL? An often asked question over the years. We'll find out soon enough, but we'll tell you what Urban Meyer has been doing down there. Stay tuned. We're coming back with more on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Take it away, Chase.
As summer heats up, so does the sports betting action at BetMGM. Sign up now using the code 1025GAME, and your first wager is totally risk-free up to $600. Place all your bets on the exciting showdowns in MLB, MLS, and more sports from around the globe. And when you register with BetMGM, you'll also get instant access to a variety of parlay selection features, live betting options, player props, and daily boosted odds specials on the big games. From breathtaking goals to colossal home runs, the king of sportsbooks takes every play to a whole new level of excitement. Simply download the BetMGM app today, or you can go to BetMGM.com. Use that code 1025GAME to get back up to $600 on your very first wager. It's a new customer offer, paid in free bets. You must be 21 years or older, must be in Tennessee. Visit BetMGM.com for a full list of terms and conditions. For problem gambling support, call the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789. ESPN 94.9 is the official English radio home of the Nashville Soccer Club. Listen in Sunday as Nashville SC takes on Miami. Pre-game at 4:45, the match at 5 o'clock. 0-0, the draw last night against the New England Revolution for Nashville SC. Welcome back in, Darren, Daunic, and Chase McCabe, Willie Daunic, Elijah Campbell here with you. Darren with the week off. He'll be back on Monday after his vacation. And being told that game in Miami, David Beckham is supposed to be in the house, as he is one of the owners of Miami. So
you can bend it like Beckham.
You can. Now, will both Beckhams be there? I don't know, but David Beckham supposedly will be there. But last night was big for Nashville SC because New England, the Revolution, they've been one of the best teams. They've been the best team in the East, and have been on quite a run. So the fact that Nashville has had or will have had 3 games in 8 days, essentially, as the schedule has gotten more compact. Gary Smith had a little bit of a different lineup to start last night, trying to preserve some of his better players, so didn't start some of the names that you're used to, brought them in later in the match, and was able to preserve a 0-0 draw and get that point. I thought was huge for the club to do that last night. Because I think Nashville's showing that they belong in the conversation, but New England has been so good. I think getting a point out of that one on the road, that's just as good as a win. Especially
when you, as you mentioned, you consider the venue and how dominant New England's been there, but also when you're facing 3 games in 8 days. They've gone through some stretches where it's been in a groove of 1 game per week, but when you got that midweek game, and you're faced with that, do I play guys and maybe wear them out a little bit, or do I need to use my depth? They're able to successfully do that, and I'll tell you, they easily could have won the game. I don't know if I would say
they had some looks.
They dominated the game, but if a bounce goes their way, and Joe Willis made a couple of good saves too at the same time, but they could have lost the game. But I thought that they didn't walk away by saying, "Oh boy, hey, they were really fortunate to get a tie there." It was a pretty fair game, back and forth, both teams with chances. Agreed? I don't know what I'm looking at.
No, I totally agree.
They had their chances.
And what you say about Joe Willis, 6 saves, his MLS leading 8th shutout of the season, another clean sheet. He's now recorded 17 clean sheets in 30 matches for Nashville SC and has a .88 goals against average.
Well, this is one of the things they've leaned on since Gary Smith became the coach. Going back to even before they were in the MLS, they know how to play D. They can go on the road and make it very tough for you to score.
Yeah.
They have added enough offensive talent now to balance that out. And at home, we now know that they can light it up and they can score. They've had some really fun games where they're scoring 3-4 goals, but when they need to lock down and make it tough to score, they can do that even against one of the most powerful teams in the league in their house.
Yeah.
That's important.
And they did it, they've been without Walker Zimmerman. He's been out.
One of the best defenders in the league.
Yeah, with injury. But, last night, Gary Smith had a little bit of a different lineup, as you had, Taylor Washington got a start. Dan Lovitz would come in later. Wheel gave way to Randall Leal. Leal did not start. And then Godoy comes in. You had Hani Mukhtar that was coming in off the bench. CJ Sapong came in off the bench as well. And you have to preserve your lineup. I mean, you have to rotate players in and out because, I saw the stat last night of they're averaging like 7 miles that you're running.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot out of your players.
But you also have to have the depth.
Yeah. And
that you can go to.
That.
That's the thing. This is where you go back to the ownership, the leadership, the people that they've hired, the talent evaluators.
The
Italians help too. European champions.
I'm sure they have Italian evaluators, or at least evaluators that evaluate Italians among all. But you're scouting the world. They've come up with these guys in a brand new league, a second-year team. I'll guarantee you, not every team has been able to build the type of depth, especially when the guys are shuffling in and out the way they have with when you play for your national team, all of these things that they do, they've been very resourceful. And I think that's a lot of credit. Like, I'm still learning about this league, how it works.
Sure. We all are.
But, hey, to again build the foundation that they're building before they even get to move into their new stadium, it's remarkable to me.
Yeah, and that's the crazy part, because we can remember with the Titans that when they were the Oilers and they were playing, Memphis the first year, Vandy the second year, the buzz just wasn't there. You had people that had tickets and they went to the games and it was like, hey, the NFL's here, but the buzz wasn't there.
No buzz.
When that stadium opened on then Adelphia Coliseum in 1999, and they were winning. They started winning right away, and they weren't picked to really do a whole lot, maybe be another 8-8. But, that was one of the first times that Bud Adams kind of was saying to Jeff Fisher and Floyd Reese, like, hey, it's time. It's time to start winning. It's time to start doing something. And they go 13-3, and we saw the run that they made to the Super Bowl. But the buzz got there just because of they're the Titans. That's our team now. That's not Houston's team. That's our team. That's the stadium. That's our stadium. But Nashville SC, you're just seeing this slow build of fans that are like, hey, I'm checking this out. This is cool. They're putting good crowds there in Nissan Stadium all before their place is ready to open, and they're playing well.
Okay, next game this weekend.
Miami, yep.
At Miami against not David Beckham doesn't play for the team, but
no, he's the owner.
How good is the Miami team?
That's been one of those teams that has kind of been shaky in their existence. There are different strategies about how you build an expansion team because they're in the same boat as Nashville, and Mike Jacobs has done a tremendous job with Nashville. Of all right, he had his core that he put together from the very beginning, and now he's been tweaking it as you go along. They just added Loba a few weeks ago that I think is going to be a big player for them, whereas Miami spent a lot of money, but it hasn't all come together. And so it's, there's okay, you can just throw the money and do all that and see what happens. It hasn't worked. But
yeah, they're dead last in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah. So this is an opportunity to get a road win.
Right. And that's why, if you're Gary Smith, why you did the lineup the way you did it last night, because you knew you have to play the numbers here. If they had a chance to win last night, especially when Mukhtar and some of the subs came in, they had some looks. But you also have to know that you're going up against the best team in the East. So try and get the point out of it. And take that, and then have your guys rested to take on Miami, where you should get the win and get the 3 points. So it's all about the strategy that you have to play.
All right, we will focus off of Miami, move north in Florida, and go down to Jacksonville when we come back, and we will talk Jaguars, Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence, etc. We know every road that the Titans travel throughout any given NFL season, you got two meetings with the Jaguars. Not every year those games have been gimmies. You would think that, hey, you just get your 2 wins against the Jags. It's been anything but the case over the years. They did find a way to get them twice last year, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. We'll talk about what Urban Meyer's doing. Mike DiRocco is Teron Davenport's counterpart for ESPN.com down in Jacksonville. He wrote a really interesting article yesterday about something Urban Meyer is doing in practice that's very college-esque. We'll ask him about that and other things with the team when we come back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. We move into the second half of Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. Willie Daunic and Chase McCabe here with you, along with Elijah Campbell producing. Darren is on vacation this week. As we mentioned before, a lot of interesting storylines going on down in Jacksonville, and of course, all Titan fans keeping an eye on the Jaguars, big division rival. Good story written by Mike DeRocco, our next guest, who joins us here. He's with ESPN.com, talking about some of the tactics that Urban Meyer is using to try to get some things going down there with that young roster. Mike, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Oh, appreciate you guys having me.
Well, we've talked any number of times over the years about how a college coach tries to make it work in the NFL. How challenging is it? And you have a story yesterday about some drills that Urban is doing where he creates one-on-one situations and he pits one guy against another and deems a winner. And not only does he evaluate that, he makes it public, right, to everybody at the practice. He says the winner is McCabe. McCabe beats Elijah Campbell in this drill, score one for him, and he keeps track of these things. I'm sure a lot of professional coaches would say, you know what, it may be great for high school, it may be great for college. Don't think that's going to fly in the NFL. But tell me what you're seeing as this goes on, because I think it's a fascinating question.
Yeah, and we talked to a couple of players yesterday, and they didn't seem to mind the whole winner-loser thing anyway. I mean, there's obviously, when Urban talked about, because I asked Urban, I'm like, so you use this, when it comes time to cut, you're going to pull out the sheet and look at these guys, and if it's, the last DB spot is between guy A and B, you'll probably, will you look at these sheets? And he's like, yeah, I've never used it as a cut thing before. But, before I used to use it when I was at Florida and Ohio State to make differentiations between guys that I think should start. This guy's going to start because he's won more of X, and there's other things that obviously go into it. But that's basically the bottom line, is he never used it for cuts before, and this now he's going to. And let's be honest, guys like Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence, although they didn't do any of those drills with the quarterbacks, but Marvin Jones and DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault and, Brandon Linder, the starting center. I mean, those guys, Shaquille Griffin in the corner, like those guys are making the roster, and they're 99.9% starting. I mean, this is really for those bubble guys and those – 20, the first cut is going to be from 90 to 85, then 85 to 80, and then 80 to 53. So it's for those bubble guys that he's going to do it. And the guys that we talked to yesterday said they didn't mind it. They don't, the person who's announcing it is Meyer's chief of staff, who basically makes announcements throughout the practices anyway. It'll be like, 30 seconds to stretching, offense on field 1, defense on field 2, 7-on-7 red zone going away from the stadium, that kind of stuff. So they've sort of kind of gotten conditioned that there's going to be somebody basically announcing stuff at practice. But it was interesting to see, because it would be, two guys will do like the two tight end drills, like I said, and Chris Manhurts will be matched up against Tim Tebow, and it's, you got to try and stay with the other guy, and it's winner Manhurts or winner Tebow. It was just weird to see. But it's, seems to be, look, everything that Urban's done, the players have responded to because of his track record, and the fact that he's done a really good job of making sure that they have whatever they need and giving them everything they need to be successful. The latest thing is putting together a recovery treatment area for them where they can get cryotherapy or massage or cupping or all the stuff that they do where they used to have to go outside the facility and pay for. Now they can get it there and not have to pay for it. So he's won them over from that standpoint. So this is anything that he tries, they're going to be really supportive of at this point anyway. We got to get into the season and see how things go, obviously wins and losses and all that other stuff. But to this point, they seem to be fine with it. And, it's created a really high tempo, high energy atmosphere out there at practice.
I think it's a great case study, and if you're the Jaguars, I think from afar it looks like, what do you have to lose? Everything you've done the last several years really hasn't led to anything the last few years, so
right.
You're kind of starting from scratch. So why not do some things that maybe haven't been done before? So I kind of like that idea, and he's trying to build an identity down there.
Yeah, and look, this is what he knows. So, and he knows that this has been successful at Florida and at Ohio State. So he's going to try the things that he knows have been successful and see how they work. Now, he's got an experienced group of assistants, some guys that have coached at the NFL level for a long time. Darrell Bevell, Brian Schottenheimer, Joe Cullen, for example. So those guys he's running these ideas by those guys too, as well. And it's like, you know what, we'll give this a shot. It would not surprise me if after this year, maybe some things change significantly, and he doesn't do some of the same stuff last year, but he doesn't know what's going to work at the NFL level until he tries it. So we'll see how this goes. And Urban has admitted, he's like, look, I don't know what the preseason is like. He's like, I don't know how to work the roster or figure out who's going to play how many snaps in the preseason. That's what I'm going to lean on these assistants for. And he's smart enough to know that he doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he's going to kind of wing it as he goes. So this is something that, like I said, we may not see this next year, or it may become something completely normal that he does every year if he's with the Jags for 15 years.
So along those lines, when he's sort of admitting, hey, I don't know about these things, he came out, and this is an interesting thing that's going on here as well, and I would say it happens in double-digit, conservatively, maybe closer to half of the football stadiums these days, unless you're in a place like Green Bay or maybe Chicago where you have those ironclad fans. They're going to be there every week. But the other team's fans make weekend trips to the visitor stadiums all the time. It happens here. Even when the Titans are good, it's become a problem that I don't think they've really tried to combat here a whole lot. And Urban Meyer said that we got to get our fans in there. We got to stop this. How did that go over down there?
Well, the fans ate it up that were at practice that heard them. And it's funny because they had fans in the stands on Friday and Saturday of last week. And he did the same speech 2 days in a row. So it was really kind of funny to hear it the second day. I was like, is he going to drop the S-bomb or is he going to kind of, censor himself? But nope, he dropped the S-bomb and they all loved it. But that's the thing. I mean, in Jacksonville, in 2017 when they were good, even then opposing fans got in. But like when a team like New England comes down here, or a team like Pittsburgh, for example, comes down here, if the Jags aren't very good, like in 2018 when Pittsburgh came into town, it was about 50-50. And you don't ever want to look up as a coach or a Jaguars player, look up and go, there's half opposing fans in here. But Urban also knows the bottom line is you win games, the fans will come. I mean, that's everywhere. There are a few exceptions, like you said. But I mean, take a look. If the Patriots struggle for the next 5 or 6 years and no playoff appearances, that place won't be packed anymore. I mean, it's win and they come, and he knows that. And he's just really trying to kind of create some excitement and roll with the excitement here in Jacksonville, get the atmosphere going up, and get everybody enthusiastic about everything. So I get why he's doing it. But again, the bottom line is win games and they'll be in there. Lose games and no one's coming.
We're talking to Mike Duraco. ESPN covers the Jags for them. So looking at the quarterback situation, obviously Trevor Lawrence goes number 1 overall to the Jags and is going to be the quarterback of the future. But is it I guess a foregone conclusion he's going to start week 1 against Houston, or is there actually a quarterback battle for the number 1 spot?
No, I mean it's his job. I think people would riot and revolt and do a lot of bad things if they roll out Gardner Minshew to start that season opener in Texas there. Urban had said that he was going to have Minshew and Lawrence rotate days with the first team. So the first 4 days of practice, they each got 2 days with the first team. Well, the last 3 days, it's been Trevor with the first team. So I think we're seeing that, yes, you know what, he's got to get the majority of his reps with the ones because he's got to get used to these guys. He's got to get timing down and all that good stuff. So I really would be stunned if Trevor Lawrence is, barring injury, is not starting that opener.
So how much do you think they're going to use him in the preseason opener against the Browns? I know C.J. Beathard also on the roster at quarterback, but do you think you'll see a good fair amount of Trevor Lawrence in that first game?
I don't know because, we asked Urban about that the other day, and his thing was like, you know what, we haven't even started that yet. We haven't even figured that out yet. And that's where he said, look, I don't know how we're going to do that. I don't know how it normally works. So with the one less preseason game, he's like, we're going to get through the scrimmage, which is this Sunday. And then at that point, they'll start figuring out what they're going to do in that game against the Browns and how they want to break things up. But, with only 3 preseason games and him the rookie quarterback, you got to get him as many reps as you can. So I'm expecting him, obviously, to play. The thinking might be, that essentially you throw last year with 4 preseason games, the starters usually would play a quarter in that first preseason game and then would play more in the second game. And then, depending on what you wanted to do with them in the third and none in the fourth. Well, the trend recently was, most of these guys didn't play hardly at all. And if you go back and you look at 2019, I think Nick Foles played maybe 20 snaps as the starting quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see how they break it down. But I'd be stunned. The educated guess would be they play a quarter in the first one. They play at least a half, maybe into the third quarter of the second preseason game, and then none or maybe a drive at best in the third one.
With the Colts situation at quarterback with Carson Wentz, obviously Gardner Minshew is a name that we've tossed out there as being a potential trade candidate for Indy. Do you see that as a possibility with it being in division, or do they seem happy to keep Gardner Minshew as the number 2?
He's been the second best quarterback in camp, and that's partly, too, because C.J. Beathard has been on the COVID list for the last couple of days. But, even before that, Beathard didn't look as good as Minshew had, and Minshew was better than Beathard in the spring, too. The problem you run into for the Jags, I suppose it's a problem, but you guarantee Beathard $2.7 million. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them keep those 3. But I think they would be willing to move Minshew if they get a decent enough offer. The question would be, what does that take? He was a 6th-round pick. His value was so much higher after the 2019 season than certainly after this past season. He didn't play well at all. Hit the hand injury for at least a week. Jay Gruden is a guy that well respected around the league, and these coaches talk, and the bottom line was that they felt like they couldn't count on Gardner Minshew to stay in the pocket, to take some shots down the field, and that Minshew was really at his best when he was running around out there creating like backyard football. And the bottom line is you can't game plan that. That just kind of happens naturally. So for a guy like Minshew, if he has to be your starter for a week or 2 as a backup, then I think he's fine. But if you have to rely on him for a 7-8 week stretch, I'm not sure that that's the best option. But what would the Jags take? If they could get a 5th-round pick, I think they would probably be ecstatic with that, and I think they probably would pull that trigger. But I just don't know. Blake Bortles is out there for just to throw a name out that that won games in this league a lot more than Minshew has, so maybe he's a guy that might get some run first, but I just don't know how much attention he'll get from some other teams.
And now the $1 million question: Tim Tebow, now a tight end, reunited with Urban Meyer. You think he's going to make it? Have you seen enough to make you think he's going to make it, or need to see more?
I still need to see some more physically from him. They've only been in pads a couple of days. He's caught pretty much everything they've thrown him. But as Urban Meyer pointed out the other day, in the individual drills, he catches the ball with his hands, no problem. In the 7-on-7, 11-on-11, he's catching the ball with his body. It's a lot of body catching. And if you don't get a lot of separation from whoever's covering you, which is exactly what the case is, he's going to be 34, so he doesn't run as well as he used to. You need to go reach out and go get that ball. You let it get into your body, and that gives the defender a chance to get it in, get a hand in there and knock it out or what have you. So he's got to improve on that. Physically, he's not the biggest guy at tight end. He's only 6'3", 250. He's the smallest tight end they have. He worked out at some fullback stuff and some H-back stuff, so that was interesting to see. So I still think that if Urban Meyer is committed to using him in that H-back role, in a fullback role, maybe take some wildcat snaps at quarterback as well, some short yardage stuff, then I think that he has a really good chance of making the roster. And helping that, too, is the fact that the tight ends overall have just been kind of it's an underwhelming group. There's not a big-time pass catcher in it. Chris Manhertz is a massive blocker, and that's what they want him to do. The only other tight end with really some pass-catching experience is James O'Shaughnessy, and he's been battling an ankle injury, so he hasn't really done much. So it's kind of an underwhelming position group. So if he's able to give them some other value there, including on special teams too, then I do think he has a really good chance of making it.
That's a huge aspect, of course, is, can he play enough to help the team? But I'm sure part of Urban Meyer's thinking is we know the relationship with those two, the area of the country that they're in, how popular that would be. But also, Mike, the effect that Tim Tebow has always had in a locker room, setting the example, work ethic, I'm sure that's part of the equation here is he wants to make an influence, even if he doesn't make the team, just set the tone at practice all the time.
Yeah, but, that works in college. But when you get into the pro level, these guys know who can play and who can't. I mean, it's very evident to them. I mean, especially when you have a roster of 90 guys, I mean, half of those guys really don't belong on an NFL roster and won't make it on an NFL roster. So the problem you run into is it's great for this guy to be breaking teams down and to be talking about 30 minutes for the rest of our lives as the starting quarterback. But if you're the third-team tight end, I'm not really sure how much of a leader you can be. And the collegiate level and high school level, it's a lot. I mean, these guys are pros. I mean, these guys know what they have to do. This is their job. It's serious to them. I mean, it's not rah-rah, despite what every people want to think. It's more, this is my job. This is what I have to do. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to be prepared and to get my body right. And then, I'll do my job and play to the best of my ability. But at the end, it's a job for these guys. So, and guys like Carlos Hyde played for him played for Urban at Ohio State. So, I mean, he knows what the locker room is supposed to be like too. But, look, saying all that, everybody that I've spoken with, I've had people in the equipment staff tell me he's been fantastic in the locker room, super nice guy, works his butt off. The guys like him. So that's a good thing. And they respect how hard he works. And that's what, if that wasn't an issue, if that was an issue, then you'd have some real trouble. But I just want to see how he does in these preseason games, because if he does okay, then I do think he'll make that roster.
Mike, great perspective, as we expected. Thanks a lot for spending a few minutes with us today, and enjoy the rest of the camp. We'll talk to you again down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Mike DiRocco, ESPN.com, does an excellent job covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very interesting stuff on what Urban Meyer is trying to do. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about this whole dynamic of some college feel to a team that has had no success, the Tebow factor, another sort of college vibe that goes into that. Is that going to have an effect on the Jaguars? Are they going to be more competitive than they have last year? We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay tuned. You're listening to Darren, Daunic, and Chase on ESPN 102.5. The Game. Chase, get it going.
Yeah, let me tell you about Firestone Tires, the only tires driven by IndyCar drivers